The specification called for a desired speed of 400 miles per hour, 100 miles per hour faster than any other military aeroplane of the day, and able to operate efficiently at altitudes of 20,000 feet or more. It would be armed with a 20mm cannon. It was an ambitious proposal. 6 contractors, among them Lockheed, submitted designs. A senior figure of Lockheed's design team was a man who would become a legend. Clarence Kelly Johnson had joined the company in 1933. Recognized as being a precocious talent, Kelly was given free rein to design an aircraft that fitted the specification. Realizing that a single-engine aircraft could not possibly match the performance required, Johnson focused his attention on a twin-engine design. Kelly's initial concepts for the new fighter covered a range of configurations, but he finally decided on a profile with twin booms to accommodate the engines, with the pilot and guns in a central nacelle. Superchargers were positioned in booms behind the engines, and the armament was to consist of 4 machine guns in the nose clustered around a cannon.
It's really a beautiful looking machine. Very impressive, couple of big engines, lots of firepower, all of it in the nose, which would be very impressive if you're on the wrong end of it.
It was a visionary design.
He created something that hadn't even been conceptualized in other areas, and the P-38 was a total radical design.
Johnson's work paid off. Lockheed won the contract for an experimental prototype. In June 1937, the prototype designated XP-38 went into production. Despite early problems realizing the futuristic design, the plane was completed in just 18 months.
It was a top secret project that was shipped in by parts in trucks and assembled in a hangar.
Despite flying for only 35 minutes, the test was considered a huge success. Impressed, the US Army Air Corps decided to go after Howard Hughes' transcontinental speed record, and Lieutenant Benjamin Kelsey was ordered to fly the prototype from Marchfield, California to Mitchellfield, New York, as fast as he could. The XP-38 smashed the record by 23 minutes.
The bad thing was they didn't tell the New York people the plane was coming, and when it got there they were told to circle and we'll give you permission to land, and ran out of gas and had to belly in on a golf course.
Though Kelsey survived the impact, the aircraft did not. Lockheed's prototype XP-38, the only one of its kind, was destroyed, but it had proved its worth. As Europe descended into chaos, the US Army Air Corps ordered 66 P-38s. The first ever 400-mile-per-hour fighter was officially given the green light. Early in 1939, Britain and France ordered 667 P-38s, but the planes, dubbed Lightnings by the British, were to be built without superchargers. Lockheed engineers protested this decision, labeling the variant the castrated P-38. With the fall of France in 1940, Britain took over the whole P-38 order, but their decision to remove the superchargers would have dire consequences. Having taken delivery of just 3 castrated Lightnings, the RAF realized that the plane's performance was severely limited.
The British didn't like the airplane, and they'd been in conflict for quite a while, and they knew airplanes, and they didn't want that thing, and it was a real dog. It didn't have some turbo, it didn't fly high, all the props turned in the same direction.
Faced with an inferior fighter, Britain cancelled the entire order. From now on, the P-38 would be solely an American fighter, but its entry into service was not a smooth one, as P-38. But on the morning of December the 7th, 1941, everything changed. In the days following the attack on Pearl Harbor, the Japanese, guided by Admiral Yamamoto, scored a series of crushing victories in the Pacific. The Pacific Fleet had been all but destroyed, and MacArthur's army in the Philippines began its ill-fated retreat. By capturing Wake Island, Dutch New Guinea, and the strategic port of Rabaul, Japan gained the upper hand across the Pacific. Reeling from this series of body blows, America prepared to send its aircraft to war. In accordance with the Allied Europe First strategy, the US sent its older P-39s to the Pacific and its new P-38s to Britain.
We who went to the Southwest Pacific, any place in the Pacific, we were just sent there more or less as a holding detail to try to stem the flow and hold on to what we had and keep the Japs from capturing any more.
But the Lightning's performance in Europe fell short of expectations. Operating at altitudes of around 15,000 feet, far lower than it had been designed for, the large twin-engined Lightning proved to be considerably less maneuverable than smaller Axis aircraft like the ME-109. But the P-38's devastating firepower often compensated for its lack of maneuverability at low altitude. Now, the US Air Force looked for a high-altitude role for its P-38s in Europe. They soon found one. 99 P-38s were modified for photo reconnaissance missions.
One of the main things you need is stability, and if your camera is wobbling, you're not going to get a good picture. And the P-38 was so smooth and quiet, there was no drift caused by the torque of the propellers. And because it was such a stable aircraft, you could get more accurate maps.
But flown without fighter escort, these missions could be extremely dangerous.
We had cameras instead of guns, but we also didn't have as much armor plating on our planes. The theory was to cut down the weight to increase our speed, so we were probably close to 2,000 pounds lighter than the fighter version of the same aircraft. We lost a lot of guys. We had a 70% casualty rate, but nobody ever considered we were doing anything brave because you're only taking pictures out there.
But on the other side of the world, P-38s would face even greater dangers. In the desperate days of early 1942, one aircraft dominated the skies of the Pacific. The performance of the Mitsubishi A6M ZERRO in every major battle of the war to date confirmed its superiority as a fighter. American airmen flying P-39s and P-40s were powerless to stop them.
The Air Force considered the P-39 as our #1 fighter until they had to use it in combat, and they found out then that it was not the aircraft for the job.
If I had been jumped by Zeros in a P-39 back in those days, the chances are I wouldn't be here talking to you. That's about the way we all felt about it.
We had good pilots, but they just did not have the equipment. I wanted to be in an organization that did have the equipment, in this case the P-38, so that our pilots had a fighting chance.
A new fighter group consisting entirely of P-38s was established. Now American airmen in the Pacific had the equipment they so badly needed to settle old scores.
Big thing is, our country was fighting for its life. Japanese sneak attack on Pearl Harbor. They were a hemi-demi semi-quiver away from attacking our homeland. Our country was being threatened. What choice did you have?
Even though Lockheed's P-38 Lightnings were being produced in greater numbers, precious few were deployed to the Southwest Pacific. Despite this disadvantage, the P-38 would play a key role in one of the most crucial missions of the war. After Japan's crushing defeats at Midway and Guadalcanal, Admiral Yamamoto, the strategic mastermind behind the infamous attack at Pearl Harbor, planned a tour of frontline bases to restore flagging morale. On April the 13th, 1943, American codebreakers intercepted a message which included explicit details of Yamamoto's schedule. A plan to intercept was devised.
We had broken the Japanese code and knew that Yamamoto was going to make this trip to one of his outposts, and they knew his habits were very punctual, and that's how they were able to put this mission together.
At 8 a.m. on the morning of April the 18th, a flight of P-38s from the 339th Fighter Squadron took to the skies.
They sent 16 P-38s. 12 of them would be top cover, and 4 of the P-38s would be the attack group. They would go down after the Betty bomber that Yamamoto was supposed to be in, and the other 12 airplanes would chase off any Japanese fighters.
Just 1.5 hours later, the Americans spotted Yamamoto's flight of 2 Bettys and 6 Zerros. 4 of the P-38s pounced, and in the ensuing battle, both Bettys were hit, and Yamamoto's aircraft plunged into the jungle below. America's Lightnings had come out fighting, but there was still a long way to go. Now it would face its toughest test yet, against the battle-hardened Japanese pilots in the skies of the Southwest Pacific.